Mike Pachelli here. Thanks for tuning in. This is the third installment of the Beatles' Uncommon Chords, and I'll be talking about their album, A Hard Day's Night. A Hard Day's Night was released on Parlophone Records on July 10th, 1964. It's the only Beatles album where all the songs were written by John and Paul. Side 1 of A Hard Day's Night contains songs that were in the film, and Side 2, Beatles classics, who knows why they didn't make the film. Fun facts to know and tell. In the United States, UA released a version of A Hard Day's Night a month earlier, actually on June 26th of 64, but they didn't include all of the songs on the official release. But for some reason, they put 4 syrupy Muzak instrumentals that George Martin did. Who knows why? The title for A Hard Day's Night is a Ringo malapropism. After a session, he came outside, saw it was dark, and said, "It's a hard day's night." Lennon actually used that phrase, and when the film's producer heard it, he said, "That's perfect." So John Lennon got busy and overnight wrote the title track. The album was recorded over 9 consecutive days between January and June of 1964 on a brand new 4-track. And it was getting recorded while they were touring and actually shooting the film. So there's a number of really cool and uncommon chords they used. Let's get started. People will ask, so I'll just say up front, I'm playing a Gretsch country classic through a Roland Cube Street EX. When the Beatles played A Hard Day's Night live, George and John both played an F add 9 for the intro chord. And at the same time, Paul McCartney played the D note on his bass. But on the record, it was something different. George did, in fact, play an F add 9 on his 12-string Rickenbacker. Paul, in fact, did play a D on his bass. And logic would assume that John, thinking, well, since Paul is playing a D on the bass, I'll play some kind of D chord. And John plays a D suspended, voiced like this. Now, if you put those two together with a D on the bass, it'll sound pretty much like the opening chord to A Hard Day's Night, but something's missing. And what it is on piano, George Martin played a D7 suspended, and it would have been voiced D, G, D, G, C, with the C being middle C. So you can't get it on the guitar because it'd be too low, but the notes again, D, G, D, G, and C on the top, like this. On the piano, but again, 2 octaves lower than what you just heard. So if you put it all together, it sounds like this. And now you know how that first iconic chord was created. The next song to have some uncommon chords is John Lennon's masterpiece, If I Fell. The song is in the key of D, and although the intro uses first and second position pretty common chords, the usage is uncommon. So it's in the key of D, but the song starts on an E flat minor, to a D, to a D flat, to a B flat minor, back to an E flat minor, to a D, to an E minor, to an A, and then they're in the key of D. And the other uncommon usage is George is playing his 12-string guitar, and the way he voices his D chord is like this. Right? So he plays his first D chord. To and again is D. And when he plays a D7 chord, he voices it like this. Really uncommon chord. As I previously mentioned, all the songs on the Hard Day's Night album were written by Lennon and McCartney, and they wrote one for George to sing, which is called I'm Happy Just to Dance With You. It's in the key of E, and it has just, standard chords, but there's a few, oddities in there. Like on the verse, they use A6 to B6 to E. Not that odd for today's standards, but back in the early 60s it was. But the really oddest one is on the verse, when the verse goes, and on da 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 da, that part. Right? They stick a G augmented in there. It really should be some kind of a B chord, because it would be, but they make it a G augmented. You can call that a B augmented too, basically the same notes, but it's voiced down here. And the other, semi-odd chord is at the very end, the way they voice the E6. Just so beautifully Beatles. During And I Love Her, George is doing some really clever and sort of uncommon things. On the verse, when they're playing F sharp minor to C sharp minor, da 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 da. George is doing some really clever arpeggios, 3-note arpeggios on a nylon string. And he plays his F sharp minor like this, to the top part of C sharp minor, repeats, and when he gets to the A chord, he just puts his second finger down and puts his third and his pinky down for the B7. And now when he plays that C sharp minor form, the bass is on E, so in essence it's like an E6th. Just clever little simple uncommon things for the early 60s. I've done a complete analogy lesson of And I Love Her, and if you'd like to see that, just in YouTube search Mike Pachelli, And I Love Her, and you'll see the complete lesson. On Tell Me Why, there's a couple of noteworthy chords. At the very beginning, John Lennon is playing first position E minor 7 to A. But George is voicing his E minor like a G6th to an A. So the combination of this E minor 7 with this kind of G6 voicing gives it a fuller sound, and it's more attention grabbing. With George's. And note, on the E minor 7 to A during the verse, George doesn't play it like that. George plays it straight. Like on the verse, George plays. He plays his E minor here. Right? But super coolness and the uncommon, just use of all these chords is at the very ending, where they play B minor to B flat 7th. And right here, John will play E minor 7th to A again. But George plays a G add 9 to an A6 to a D. Now that G add 9 that he plays, is like the same chord he played live when he did Hard Day's Night. So George's part at the very ending, again, is a... just, Beatles brilliance. The use of 6 chords in Can't Buy Me Love is noteworthy because, it's just a simple rock and roll song, but you wouldn't expect it to have the melodic nature of sixth chords, but it certainly does. You know, the beginning is just E minor to A minor. And then F6 to G6. Now, John plays the F6, but when he gets to the G, he plays a straight G. And George plays a sixth chord. And that combination of John strumming a first position G chord and George on the sixth chord is what gives the Beatles such a full sound. They do that a lot, and that's one more example. And because, you know, the song is just C7 to F7, C7, you know, G7, F7. Right, just straight ahead rocking, and then F6. Just beautiful usage. I've done a complete lesson on Can't Buy Me Love if you'd like to check that out. Just in the YouTube search, put my name, Mike Pachelli, and Can't Buy Me Love, and you'll get to see the entire lesson. On I'll Cry Instead, the Beatles set up what is in essence a polychord, in that John is strumming a first position G, and George is playing like a bar G, and then playing what in essence is a C6 over G, you know? Now, back in those days, I mean, that wouldn't necessarily occur. It was uncommon. If somebody was doing a line like, and there was a rhythm guitar, he was probably just playing low notes. But the Beatles were intuitive enough or had big enough ears to know that it's okay to strum fully and then have the other guitar player imply that C6 over G. What else is cool is when George goes to his D7, he plays a regular D7 like this, but he uses the open E string as the ninth. You know, which gives it a nice ringing out, chimey sound, rather than going to a D9 like this. You know, it wouldn't have been the same if he would have went. You know, he goes. And the other noteworthy thing is sometimes when George goes down to a C, you can hear that he puts a G on top of the C. Just sometimes, you know. You'll hear that. And that's, you know, a little unusual also for the early 60s. So those are a couple things that are really cool about that song. Well, I hope you got something out of that. And FYI, I've done 3 other complete lessons for songs from Hard Day's Night. I did Things We Said Today, You Can't Do That, and I'll Be Back. So all you have to do is go into the YouTube search bar, put my name, Mike Pachelli, and any of those titles, Things We Said Today, You Can't Do That, and or I'll Be Back, and you'll be able to view the entire lessons. If you'd like to drop me a line, you can do so at mikepachelli.com, and that's where the charts and tabs are for all of the video lessons I've done. And if you would, please subscribe to this channel, because then you'll get in your YouTube feed notices when I post a new lesson. So have fun playing these songs, and until next time, I'm Mike Pachelli. Thanks for hanging out with me.